Yeah. Most of our stuff has been East Coast or Southeast
Right.
primarily. And I just like those areas because land values are actually somewhat reasonable there still. There's a lot of vacant land, so there's a lot of potential deals to make, and they're active markets in land as well. Some areas you'll notice, you'll do your research and you'll see, there's a ton of listings, but not a lot of sales.
Right.
So either there's some sort of imbalance between what the sellers want and what the buyers want to pay, or maybe that it's just land is not too desirable in a certain area.
Welcome to the How to Scale Commercial Real Estate Show. Whether you are an active or passive investor, we'll teach you how to scale your real estate investing business into something big.
Pete Reese is the president of RealVest Properties. He has successfully purchased and sold hundreds of pieces of real estate, and he's on track to earn over $4 million in revenue here in 2022. Pete, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Sam.
Absolutely. The pleasure is mine, Pete. There are 3 questions I ask every guest who comes on the show in 90 seconds or less. Can you tell me, where did you start? Where are you now? And how did you get there?
Great. Well, I started like anyone else or a lot of other people, bought our single family home in the year 2000 and kind of got hooked because when we sold it, we made about 50 grand on it and got into flipping homes a little bit before the giant market crash in 2007 to 2009-ish area. So we were flipping homes. We were really successful with that. Kind of transitioned into, I had gotten my real estate broker's license in the meantime. And when the market crashed, I really got heavily involved into selling bank-owned properties for the banks. That's what was selling at the time. So I kind of just went where the market was. So I did that for quite some time. Also focused on short sales for quite some time, like helping homeowners sell their homes through short sales. So I got really good at that. Through that area, I actually connected with a bunch of large investment companies. And for a while there, I just focused on finding them deals. Learned a lot, sold a lot of properties through them, and kind of got the itch eventually to get back into real estate investing myself. So about 2 years ago, I kind of stumbled into the model of land flipping, and we're actually in our second full year of the business. 2021 was not even a full year in the business. Our March of 2021, we resold our first property, and now we're finishing up 2022, and hopefully on track to do 4 million, maybe 3.7, somewhere in that range. But yeah, so things are going very well, and we're just really having a good time with it.
Man, that's impressive growth. I mean, so you've been doing this for 2 years, and you talked about a lot of different aspects of the business you were involved in. I mean, going from short sales, REO properties, even brokering to institutional buyers and people like that. Like the complexity factor, I would imagine, into the land business has gone down dramatically.
Oh yeah, it's great because it's a very simple business in a way. I mean, the business model is just simply sending out direct mail offers essentially to landowners.
Yeah.
And we curate these lists and we filter them down and everything. And then we get the phone either ringing or them emailing us back. And we just work out a deal with the landowners and we buy properties at the price where it makes sense for us to then be able to put them on the market and then resell them quickly. So our average hold time is only about 60 days. So land is, typically I had this vision that land takes forever to sell, and certain models of land investing do take a long time to sell, but not in this model. It's more of a quick flip situation, and we'll do minor development things to these properties. We might get them surveyed. We might get a perk test. We might do some clearing on the properties. So we do some of those things to kind of enhance the value for a prospective buyer. But ultimately, we just try to keep moving really quick.
Wow. So give me an ideal purchase for you guys. What's the ideal property look like that you want to buy?
Well, first of all, we try to double our money in all of our investments. So for the most part, we're using our own cash. So right now, try to stay like on the minimum side of a purchase price of say 30,000. Try to sell it for net 60,000 was great. I actually like at this point, I'm trying to gravitate towards the bigger and bigger properties, like $100,000 purchase price, $150,000 purchase price. But many times the goal is the same, to try to double our money. And, if we can do that every 60 days, then it starts multiplying very quickly.
Have you ever figured out the annualized return on, like, say, a single dollar invested, and just sat down and tried to do the math just for kicks and giggles?
Oh yeah, it's insane. Some of the deals, I've had deals where we hold it for 21 days only, and that's including like a resale escrow period and everything. And maybe triple our money, and then it's just astronomical. It turns it's like thousands of percentage if you multiply that out, keep that money moving.
Right, right. Oh, that's hysterical. I love that. I think one of the things that I would find challenging in this model, and tell me why I'm wrong, is that at $30,000 a pop, say on an average size, 30 to 50, and you're going to do 4 million in revenue. I'm not going to try to do the math on the show here, but that's a lot of parcels of property. It's a lot of moving pieces. How do you manage all of that in a meaningful way?
Yeah, I've got a great team around me. That's how I've made it happen. I've got kind of everyone to sort of help me with every aspect of it. And at this point, I'm kind of planning out our mailings, like where we want to send mail to in our outreach. I'm approving the deals and, working on the resale side of things, a lot of the negotiations on offers that come in. So that's kind of where I do most of my stuff. But I've got a great team handling all the different aspects. I've got someone that does all the phone calls with any of the sellers, or any of the communication to get things under contract. I've got a transaction manager that handles it from contract to closing. And yeah, I've got a property analyst that helps me review all these properties and dig into them deep and kind of do our due diligence, and a number of other team members as well that help along the way.
There's parcels of land you can buy in the United States that aren't worth acquiring. I'm thinking like you got in the Western states and it's like, oh, hey, there's this giant tract of land, 100 acres in Arizona in the middle of absolutely nowhere.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
there's people that focus on that in the land investing side of things, the desert squares, we call them. Personally, I don't see the appeal to them, but it's kind of a different model that a lot of them do. They'll buy these things for ultra cheap,
right.
Maybe $100 an acre or something, and then they'll sell it to people on terms, for a much higher price. So that's a whole different thing than what I'm doing, because we're buying them for cash and then we're cashing out when we resell them. We're not holding any of the notes on any of these properties. And the properties that we're buying are generally within an hour to two of major metropolitan areas, but rural areas. And for the most part, we're kind of buying 10-acre plus parcels at this point, although we have done smaller. But that way that the properties could either be used for recreational purposes or potentially a home site. So
right. How have you selected where? I mean, the United States is a big country, so how have you selected where is an ideal target market for you guys? I know you mentioned a couple of things within a couple hours of a major city, but that still leaves a lot of land to buy.
Yeah. Most of our stuff has been the East Coast or Southeast primarily. And I just like those areas because land values are actually somewhat reasonable there still. There's a lot of vacant land, so there's a lot of potential deals to make, and they're active markets in land as well. Some areas you'll notice, you'll do your research and you'll see, there's a ton of listings, but not a lot of sales.
Right.
So either there's some sort of imbalance between what the sellers want and what the buyers want to pay, or maybe that it's just land is not too desirable in a certain area. Those areas still work. You just have to be able to put it on the market at just such a cheap price to really gain attention.
How are people financing the acquisition of it, or do you require that your buyers all have cash?
Yeah, we just put it on we list it with a broker, just like a house or a commercial property, and then the buyers figure it out on their end. So some of them it's cash, and some of them are using a HELOC on, say, a primary residence. I see that happen a lot, to get the cash for this deal. Mm-hmm. And then there are some land specific lenders that sometimes the buyers use.
Okay. So that option is out there. Have you seen? I know it kind of feels like I'm wandering all over the place here, but right. I've got just some kind of building the picture, if you will. Let's say that there's talk of recession, there's talk of things slowing down. How does land perform in an economic downturn?
Yeah, some of these rural areas, they didn't really skyrocket, and this kind of last jump in the real estate market, so they're a little bit more stable. They'd have risen some, but I'll tell you that that seems to be demand for good parcels. Now, that's one thing that I've learned, over the second year in the business is even if a property is cheap, but it's just not a great piece of land, I don't buy it in the first place. There's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of pieces of land that you really wouldn't want to buy at any price. And a lot of the deals we turn down after they come across our desk because it's not a good piece of land. When you look at it, like as a buyer, would I want this property? And if it's got major issues, like it's all swamp or it's on the side of a mountain, or if it's landlocked, I mean, a lot of these things, even if they're ultra cheap, I don't want to buy them because it's going to be tough to resell. So as long as it's a good piece of land and you can offer it at a good price, it's slightly below market. The buyers are definitely there.
Got it. So what are some things that define a good piece of land? I know you mentioned 10 acres plus. Obviously now we know not to buy on the side of a mountain or a swamp. Could see both of those being tough.
There are buyers for those things too, but it's just not what I prefer to sell. And like I said, you just have to get some of those things ultra cheap. I like the properties that have kind of a gentle topography, not too sloped. I like properties that have road frontage. And then sometimes we buy some properties that have easement access, where you cut through a neighbor's property. But as long as it's deeded and legal access and it's well defined, then I don't have a problem with it. I also like, properties that are, no wetlands or no FEMA flood zone. That's another consideration.
Right.
So that's kind of the major checklist. And we try to buy properties that at least have the potential to build on. So we go through a whole checklist, we're calling the county, the city, whoever it is, and just going through a whole checklist of questions that we ask them. We try to get as much of a assurance from them that it's a potentially buildable property before we'll close on it. So
right. And that makes sense. What's your typical cycle from under contract to when you officially buy it? How long does that take? I know you said hold them for about 60 days, but what's your due diligence cycle on the front?
Yeah, I mean, we try to buy them as quickly as possible, but the main holdup that we normally run into are the title searches. So it's the title company or the attorney that's doing the title search on the property. Those generally take a little bit of time. I mean, probably on average, it's about 30 days. I would love to close them in 2 weeks if we could. But, we're just waiting for that title work to come in most of the time. And, as soon as we get a property under contract, we've got this whole chain reaction of events that happen. We get a photographer ordered to go out there. We get, we order this extra due diligence, calling the county and the city and just a number of things that start happening. And then we compile that data as soon as we have them and just make sure everything's good and then move forward if it does. So.
That was going to be my question. Do you guys site visit every property? It sounds like for the photographer you do, but obviously you personally don't site visit every property.
Yeah, personally, I've only been to a few of the properties that we've ever owned. And that was a road trip that we did last year. It's kind of a fun experience. But yeah, for the most part, I never see any of these properties on the ground.
Wow, that's wild. So up until the point when you get it under contract, you've never actually physically set site. Or, if you can, I'm sure you can Google map it. But even then, a lot of your rural properties, maybe even that's not widely available.
Yeah, we use a tool called MapRight, which allows us to really get a lot of data on every parcel in the United States. I'm sure there are exceptions, but we get to see all kinds of satellite image data. We get to see overlays with FEMA flood zones and wetlands and topography and a lot of other things. We could see the road frontage. So we could see a lot of that stuff. It's no substitute for sending someone out to the property and getting the boots on the ground, but it's so we always send a photographer out, and sometimes we've got a local broker or agent that we're working with too that'll go out to the property for us as well. So we try to do that whenever we can. We always resell the properties with a local broker, and we kind of use them during the due diligence process and get their opinion on what the value of the property is or what the area is like. And then we relist the property with them.
I would imagine that you would want to use a broker or agent that has experience selling land because it's a different thing to sell than, a house or even a warehouse or anything else.
Yeah, we look for the top land brokers in the particular areas that we're working on, and we try to work with them, and we try to get as many deals as we can with them to make it a kind of a win-win deal.
So let me ask you this, Pete. You guys do all of your own transactions with in-house capital, or do you guys use outside capital as well at times?
Yeah, that's a really good question. For the most part, we do it all with our own cash. Now, I have done 2 properties in the past where I've closed them with a partner,
Mhm.
And essentially in this land business, there are money partners available. And
Right.
it's a situation where it's tough to get a bank loan for something like this. Like
Right.
maybe it's available as an investor, but it's pretty tough. So what you do is there are money partners out there, and you bring the deal to them, and they see the numbers and see how it's going to work, and then they bring the money to the table, and then we split the profits when it all is said and done. So I've done that on two properties so far out of about 100 or so that we've completed flips on, and on the one of them, it was a large dollar amount. It was $315,000. It was like a 600 some acre property. So we ended up not quite doubling our money. We sold it for 595, but after closing costs and everything like that, and a couple of other expenses, each of us netted about $108,000.
Right. So
So
you could afford to take your wife out to dinner once at least.
yeah, they were happy. My family was happy when I closed that one. I was excited too. But when you look at the ROI on that, I mean, I brought the deal, but I
Sure.
didn't put any of my money into the deal at all, and I
Right.
still made $108,000 on it.
That's an infinite
So
return on your. I mean,
infinite ROI. I love it.
right. Absolutely. Tell me about a deal gone bad.
Deal gone bad. Well, knock on wood, I haven't lost money on any deal yet.
Hmm.
Any of these properties I bought. So
Okay.
kind of the worst percentage return on investment was right around 20%. And I held it for, something I had to hold for a while too, to get that 20%, like 180 days, which is way longer than we normally do. But, uh, I guess a deal gone bad would be one that took a lot of effort and I made hardly anything on it. And it was the first and only property that I bought that was landlocked, 12-acre property. I thought this was such a great deal. And I'm picking it up for $3,000. I was like, how can I lose on this? I could sell it for 20,000, no problem.
Mm.
So I tried to list it for that, and tons of buyer interest, but no one understood the fact that it was landlocked. And I explained it to them, put it, it was in the listing that way and everything. And so just a bunch of activity had to sort through. It fell out of escrow a couple times. I think people just didn't really understand what it was and the limitations of what you could do with the property, but ended up selling it for, 5 or 6 grand, something like that. So made money on it, but it was just such a hassle and it was such a small amount of money that it was just really kind of lesson learned, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just sounds like you're never gonna get the time back. The
Yeah,
hassle. I mean, going under
time. You're
escrow a
right.
couple times, monkeying with all the paperwork, going back and forth, talking to. I mean, I can only
I
imagine
know. Over a
dozens of
couple
hours.
$1,000. Yeah.
You know what? But I've heard of a lot worse stories. I mean, in the end. So let's assume it was a net wash, even in the end.
Right.
Like once you
Right.
calculate your time, it's like I've still heard a lot worse stories of like, oh, this is went bad, and I lost $500,000. So I've heard those.
Yeah. That's
Uh,
tough.
no, absolutely. No, and I think I think it's valuable though. I mean, to learn those lessons and to say, okay, here's what not to buy. Because I mean, that's at some point you're gonna make those mistakes along the way. What about that property? Was there? I guess there was no easement to it. There was no deeded easement, so there's no actual way to get to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was kind of in a really populated area, 12 acres or so, kind of all these subdivisions and apartment complexes and things built all around it. I mean, you could easily walk onto the property like through these lawns from these apartment complexes and stuff, but there was no deeded legal access to the property. So, I was trying to market it as like, well, start your own, you know, frisbee golf course or I
Right.
don't know. Like I don't know what you're gonna do with it, but it's 12 acres of woods. So I don't know.
Who knows? Wow, that's
Yeah.
wild. Well, at least you unloaded that. Talk to me about entitling land and the term, as you put it, minor subdivisions. I'm really curious what a minor versus major subdivision is.
Yeah. Well, there's two different things really. There's a minor subdivision, which is taking a property, splitting it into 5 parcels or less. In most areas, they consider that a minor subdivision. And a lot of these areas, it's pretty simple. You hire a surveyor, they'll survey the property, split it up into 5 parcels, and then you record it with the county, and
Right.
that's it. So then we take a larger property and then we sell it off individually because, say we get a 50-acre parcel and we split it up into 5 10-acre parcels. Then we sell off the 10 acres individually to individual buyers because we can get a higher price per acre and a higher return on investment. So we do that sometimes. That's a good strategy. Doesn't take too long. Then there's another entitlement, kind of land major subdivision type thing that we get into sometimes. So some properties are perfectly positioned. It would be perfect for a residential subdivision. So generally what we'll do, because kind of the beginning stages, just to kind of enhance marketability. So we know it's zoned right. We know it has the right utilities. It has everything available for a subdivision, but we don't want to actually, get the bulldozers out there and put in the roads and the site. We don't want to do any of that stuff. So what we do is we hire an engineer. They draw up potentially what it could be, how many potential lots here based off of the zoning, where the roads would go in this community. And then we list it with a commercial broker and we'll just position it as what could be.
Right.
And a lot of times these developers or builders, they're going to have their own ideas of what they want to do with the land. They've got their own teams to do all this stuff. So we just generally kind of market it as like, hey, this could be a great subdivision for your company. You can move forward with that. So we've done that in a number of cases, and it's worked out really well.
So you're not actually going through the entitlement process. You are just simply but producing potential. Hey,
that's right.
This is what this could look like. Do what you want, but I want to let you know that the possibility exists on this parcel to do something like this.
Exactly. It helps the commercial broker kind of present it to the market, right? So they can, talk to their potential buyers as well. And, it actually is a different way to create value. So
absolutely. No, that's really cool. Pete, I have thoroughly enjoyed the show today. Thank you for taking the time to come on and share with us your journey. It sounds like, you've done a lot of things in real estate over the last 22 going on 23 years.
Yeah.
But it sounds like this is the one that you're having the most fun with, I would imagine.
Oh, yes. A lot of fun. And, I like deals, I like buying and selling and creating value, and just it's almost like a mini game. Right. It is a game,
Absolutely. Very, very cool. Pete, thank you for coming on the show today. If our listeners want to get in touch with you and learn more about you, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, that would be heading over to turningprofit.com. And that's a website. I've got monthly income reports where I share everything that's going on with our land business, how much we made that much, how much profit we made that month. Each deal, we break down individually and show you what we learned, what went well, what maybe didn't go as well. And maybe if you've got any interest in land flipping, that's a good place to start.
Fantastic. Pete, thank you again for coming on today. I do appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much, Sam. Really appreciate it here.